I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Rock of Ages. We're so glad to have you with us today. Folks come from all over the world to see the deep hole dimension granite quarry here. We believe it's the largest of its kind operating in the world. It's about 600 feet deep and covers about 60 square acres in surface area. Rock of Ages has been here a long time. We were founded here in Barrie in 1885. And originally we were one of many quarriers. In 1900 there were about 70 quarry companies and about 126 manufacturers or sheds. Over time, particularly during the flood of 1927 when rail was damaged for months, some of the smaller companies couldn't survive, and then later the crash of 1929 and the lingering depression caused many other companies to go out of business. So the industry consolidated, as many industries did in those days. So today, Rock of Ages is the only quarrier of Barrie Grey Granite and Bethel White Granite in Vermont, and we are one of about 25 or 26 manufacturers here in the Barrie area. And Barrie is noted as the memorial capital of the U.S. Granite is a common stone. In fact, it's the most common of the upper plutonic stones. But much of the granite in the Earth's crust is far too deep to be quarried cost effectively. Those granites that are reachable vary greatly in quality, and granite here in Barrie is particularly good in quality. If you are in the Barrie area and you look at the Burns Memorial, many Scots came here from Aberdeen, and so they erected in 1899 a tribute to Robert Burns, the national poet of Scotland. And the figure is amazing, but if you look at the pedestal on which it is situated, each face has a high relief carving on it, and it's some of the finest and smallest carving you're going to find in granite anywhere in the world. And that is possible because of the tight grain of the granite diorite here in Barrie. The State House in Montpelier was the first commercial building ever built from Barrie granite. It was constructed in the 1830s. And other state houses in the U.S. have Vermont granite. Pennsylvania State House has our Woodbury Grey granite in it. And then our Bethel White granite from Bethel, Vermont is commonly used for architecture and is used in buildings around the world. I think one of the more prominent buildings I can think of right offhand is the Natural Science Museum for the Smithsonian is clad in our Bethel White granite. The National World War II Memorial on the Mall in Washington, D.C. is not fabricated from Vermont granite. The granite was brought here for fabrication, but the two arches representing the Atlantic and Pacific theaters of the war and the eagles that flank the main gateway were fabricated in the building adjacent to us here at Rock of Ages. One of the reasons that we got that contract was because of the centuries worth of experience that our employees bring collectively in manufacturing.
I'm Mike Selly. I carve granite statues, monuments. Actually, I'm a second generation sculptor. My father did the same thing. He retired maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I believe his grandfather worked in the quarries as a family monument, just a cherub on top of a stone. Basically, they start with an idea, which is this design right here. And then we work from that. We get just a piece of paper, a piece of stone, a rock, and then we come up with a contour to saw it out. Then I had some guys help me break the rock down roughly with big sledgehammers. You can have some roses in the front. The rows are going to be raised off eventually. The background and middle is going to be pushed back like this. Those will probably take 3 or 4 months to complete. Barrie granite is about the best for carving any type of monument to me, because it's very predictable how it breaks and cuts. A lot of stones you can hit in one spot and it's going to break, a huge chunk off or something unpredictable. Barrie's very predictable.
Well, the very first pioneers were mostly English-speaking peoples that settled Vermont from New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut. But the industry prior to the U.S. Civil War remained very small, basically for 2 reasons. Granite's very hard, so it was difficult for them to cut with the hand tools that they had, and it's very heavy. Barrie granite's about 166.7 pounds a cubic foot, so it's very difficult to transport. So as long as they had to rely on hand star drills for the cutting and on horse and wagon and walk and tackle systems for moving the stone, they were limited in range as to what they could do. But by the 1870s, cutting equipment had really improved, and they had steam drills that worked quite effectively. That really improved the way that they could cut the stone. And in 1875, rail came to Barrie, and then that opened up a national transportation system for them. So in the last quarter of the 19th and the first 2 decades of the 20th centuries, the industry just blossomed, and thousands came from all over the world seeking jobs here in Barrie's granite quarries and in the finishing factories that we refer to as sheds even today. The first wave of immigrants came from Aberdeen, Scotland, which at that time was an important granite producing area. And right on their heels, folks came from Italy, all over Italy, but particularly from the northern sections of Italy where they had both marble and granite, and they had collectively centuries worth of experience in cutting. And then the third wave of immigrants were French-speaking people who came by way of Canada, where they also had a history of quarrying granite. We make cemetery memorials and mausoleums. Right after the Civil War, there was a great demand, and as technology was improving, they began switching from marble, which is a much softer material and wears more quickly in weathering conditions, to granite. And they also used granite for town memorials and statuary because it held up better. So from the 1870s onward, granite became the principal stone that was used for community statuary, for funerary statuary, and for cemetery memorials and mausoleums as well. The Barrie Montpelier area was really built on the granite industry. It employed thousands and thousands of people, especially in the beginning of the industry when everything was done by hand and there were so many people who were required to work in Barrie granite quarries and in the factories as well. We still have a very high production rate, but we can do it with fewer people today because of automation. But it was a major employer, and it really brought so many people from various areas that even though Barrie's not large by terms of population, it's one of the most cosmopolitan areas in Vermont, and that's primarily because of the granite industry.